Oh boy. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, alrighty, folks. Let's do this. All right, so pretty basic agenda for today. I got 3 practice questions to look at because the midterm is on Wednesday. So if we can, we'll do that in a little bit. I wanted to start with Q&A. I just went back into the slides for work. Using the same Slido for that. So yeah, if you have any questions, of course, feel free to raise your hand. I know not everyone's here though. So if you want to ask any questions about the exam, you can do so now. So the exam is going to be work, families, and education, right? So the 3 units we did since the first midterm. If you still, want to take a look at your first midterm, but you have not had the time, I'm planning to be around my office pretty much like from hopefully around 9:30, 10 o'clock till 3:30 tomorrow. So if you want, you can just stop by and see if I'm there, or, just to make sure that I don't get bored at like 2:45 and take off. If you're going to come, kind of midday, late in the day, just shoot me an email. So I know you're coming, because sometimes I'm just like, well, nobody came to see me today. I'm all alone. Again. I'm going home now. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to just be like, hey, I'm going to come tomorrow. Take a look at my midterm, just so I know you're coming, right? It's super easy. I just pull it up on a device. I got a couple of tablets in the office, and we take a look at it together and all of that fun stuff. But really chill. I'm trying to think. There's not like a ton of other kind of administrative stuff. I haven't quite. I'm at the burning both ends of the candle phase of the semester. So I haven't. I'm behind on a few things. So I haven't set up the accommodations yet, which I have to do today or tomorrow, more likely when I have some time. So if you have accommodations and you haven't heard anything, or you don't see it in the on e-class yet, I'm working on it. I'm very bad, and I've decided for some reason, because of their irritants, that I'm fighting with the accommodation center. They don't know that we're fighting, but we are fighting, because they sent me 20 emails on Friday, and I got my dander up, and I was like, I'm not dealing with you today, because that's just how I am this time of year. Okay, I see nobody has any questions, which is awesome. Oh, Shelby has a question. Yeah. Shelby was here an hour early, so she's really needs to ask some questions. Yeah. I'm just teasing you, Shelby. Yeah, so it's actually in the West, it's fairly universal, but it's a good question. So what Shelby's question, because people on the live stream probably couldn't hear it. So her question was, what gave rise to the McJobs in the 1980s with Gen X? Okay, so there's a whole bunch of historical things going on at this time. You kind of get a saturation. So I'll try to break it down. Saturation of the job market with baby boomers, right? So there are, the baby boomers are this huge cohort. They come into the job market and they sort of soak up a lot of the good jobs that are available, which wasn't a problem. And, as the economy was growing really quickly, up until like the beginning to middle of the 1970s, when it just absolutely ground to a halt in the period called stagflation. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is that you start to get the outsourcing of manufacturing, high value manufacturing jobs to other parts of the world, principally to East Asia, right? It starts in places like Taiwan, Japan. Japan obviously has started to compete on the market, right? Especially in things like automotives. It's in the 1970s that Honda and Toyota move really aggressively into the US market and challenge the big three automakers in major ways. So, and across the kind of high value manufacturing, the Japanese take over electronics as well. So across the kind of high value manufacturing, the workers in the West are now facing a lot more competition. And a lot of manufacturing is outsourcing to cheaper places in Asia, particularly. So that's on the kind of blue collar side. On the white collar side, one of the major industries that have been growing through the really the 40s until the 1970s was government and kind of the civil service and bureaucracies. And what happens in the 1970s is all of the governments in the West sort of face a huge debt crisis. Their debts have risen to unsustainable levels, and they're forced to sort of decide what they're going to do. Are they going to continue spending money, or are they going to cut back? Most of them decide that they have to cut back, and so one of the big places they start paring back is the public sector, which means a lot of starting out jobs in kind of civil service disappear as well. So all that ends up being left, for a lot of Gen Xers coming into the market is the service industry, right? Is basically, retail, hospitality. I'm trying to think what else. Call centers, customer service type facing jobs. Not a lot of those really high quality, good salary, good benefit, good career path jobs that were available to the baby boomers. I think that covers pretty much everything. I mean, I will say inflation goes crazy too, which causes banks to raise interest rates, which smothers the economy really badly. So growth falls off really quickly too, which doesn't help, right? Which means even companies aren't expanding because it's too expensive to borrow money. I guess that would be the one other thing. That's the inflation part of stagflation. Yes, please.
So it's stagflation, not stagnation. Because I had stagnation written down the whole time, but
Yes.
Is there a difference? I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. So hang on.
Are you using both of those things?
I'll go to let me. It is. It's what's called a portmanteau, right? So a portmanteau is a blending of two words. So yeah, it's stag. Of course, my screen wants to move on me. Inflation, which is stag. What happened here? I don't know. Which is stagnation and inflation. Oh, come on. No one likes you, Microsoft PowerPoint, except for me. I love you. Don't never change. So it's stagflation. Yeah, so it's a blend of stagnation and inflation. Okay. Would I be able to go over purchasing power quickly? Okay, yeah, I mean, it's really simple. Basically, the way that it's calculated kind of in the slide that you're talking about is like given an average salary, right? How much could people buy? What is their purchasing power? How much are they able to afford, right? How much of their salary goes to essentials? So, housing, transportation, food. There's another one. I can't remember what it is. Housing, transportation, food. There's another big one, but I just can't remember what it is. And then how much disposable income do they have? Like how much are they able to purchase, goods outside of just kind of like essentials? And basically the idea is that based on average wages versus the cost of things, the boomers were able to buy more. Gen X was able to buy more. Late millennials and Gen Z have less purchasing power, right? With starting wages, their starting wages can purchase less over time. It's getting worse and worse and worse because more, especially things like inflation and housing and well, housing and transportation as well, has basically kind of killed their purchasing power in lots of ways. It means that, they can purchase housing, but they don't have a lot of, and transportation, but they don't have a lot of money left over for other things afterwards. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, other questions. I'm like, usually Mia has questions, but everything's been perfectly clear this time, so she's good. She asks all her questions in advance. Or she's saving them for the next class she has with me, where there will be many more questions. No? Okay. Other, like, I am live streaming, right? I'm sure I am. Probably. I'm going to go with yes. Okay, well, this is going to be a short class. It's awesome. It gives me time to take a breath, get a coffee. I didn't have breakfast today. It'll be good. Oh, okay. What am I doing? I swear, like, honestly, I was last night after I got back from hockey, where for some reason the goalies didn't show up, so I strapped on the goalie equipment, which was kind of a disaster because I haven't played goal since Pee Wee, and I'm not very good at it, and everything hurts today. I was not aware of how much goalies do. I am now. And I got home and I did a bunch of work. I did marking for intro to methods. So I'm like totally out of it. Like I said, I'm burning the candle at both ends here. Alrighty. Well, let's have some fun then, since people aren't asking questions. I'll leave that up and I'll come back to it and kind of keep an eye on it. But I need to switch over the live stream. Window capture. Microsoft Edge. Yay. Okay. I have to shrink you. No, you're good. Okay. I know. It's riveting stuff in class. Okay. So I've got 3 little practice questions here. Shelby, you ruined my practice question. Why do you do this to me? No, it's okay. Okay, so this is one practice question. Again, you're gonna see these are pretty straightforward. I think probably even a little bit more straightforward than the last exam. You just kind of have to have a grasp on the material. Okay, so example the first. How did the economic crisis of the 70s lead to changes in the youth employment market? It's all that stuff I just explained 5 minutes ago, right? It's, less jobs, high quality jobs in manufacturing, less in the public sector, a shift towards, entering the workforce in that service sector, right? And low, the McJobs sector. So all of the, the saturation of the job market, stagflation, the slowing of the economy, all those things can be put in there. Sorry, this is going to be out of 10. I used to have this question out of 5. It's now out of 10. So this will be 5 and 5. Sorry, it'll be 5 and 5. I didn't notice that when I was looking at them this morning. Okay, so does that historical moment still impact young people today? I would say if you're going to answer this, you would say yes, right? We still see the impact of this because, blue collar manufacturing has never recovered. So those people who are going into kind of, blue collar work still don't have that option really to move into manufacturing easily, right? So that shift of manufacturing offshore has remained a problem. And the kind of crippling of the public sector in a lot of ways has continued as well, right? And it's gone in kind of waves. You've had cutbacks in the public sector in kind of waves, but it's still really difficult for young people to start their career in some kind of, civil society or government agency because those jobs still just don't exist. You could also throw in, like, if you want to talk about the saturation of the baby boomers, the baby boomers hung around in this market for a really long time. And only now are we finally seeing like big waves of the boomers retiring and making space in the workforce for younger workers again. So you could speak to that as well. But again, Shelby ruined my question, so it's all her fault. Shelby likes me, which is why I can tease her mercilessly. And she's taken multiple classes with me, so I know I can be mean to her. All right, how are we feeling about that one? Good? Ooh. Oh, okay. Can I All right, I'll do that after question. If I'll do that after practice questions. I don't want to go back and forth. All right, question the second. Oh, this is on education. All right, what historical trends have made it necessary for young people today to earn some type of post-secondary degree to flourish economically? Explain one way this has made the lives of young people better, one way that it has made it more difficult. Okay, so why do young people need more education? So you could talk about educational inflation and credentialism here, right, as kind of trends. As more people have moved into kind of post-secondary degrees, and there's more and more and more of them around, right, in order to kind of have that basic qualification or to stand out, you need more and more education, right? So it takes you longer and longer to become sort of a viable player in the economy. So if you're going to do well, right, you need post-secondary degrees. I could say more, but that's probably a pretty good way to answer this question. And yeah, like one way that it's made life more difficult. So obviously, you know, on the difficulty side, young people need to more education, right? So they need to spend more time in school. It's slowed down their life strategy in a lot of ways, right? So they are spending more time in school, taking on more debt, potentially delaying life transitions in major ways, especially things like marriage and childbearing, till much, much later. And you can put all of those things as a difficulty. A better way, I think, is a little bit more subtle, and you have to think about it a little bit. But one way that it has clearly made things a lot better is that it has shifted people, for the most part, out of a lot of physical labor, right? A lot of the jobs now are not physical labor; they are service industry based, and so they are less physically demanding. And I can't draw on this, can I? No, I can't. I want to. The other thing that you could say, and again, you're going to have to be a little inferential to get a question like this. You got to have to really think. It has definitely opened a lot more paths for women, right? For women in the workplace, and especially in really high earning fields. So that would be, I think, one way it's made things better, especially if you are a woman. Okay, so that, again, pretty simple.
Could you also say that post-college dropout rates have decreased because the pressure is higher education?
Yeah, I think you could make that case. And this is one thing. There isn't like that was how I would answer it. There isn't a single perfect right answer. So I would probably accept what you have said as well, right? More education, it becomes kind of necessary. I mean, in a sense, you could argue that makes things worse too, because people can't, if they're not doing well in school, they have to stay. But anyway, I can see that going both ways. But I'd probably still give you the marks. Because it'd be novel, and I'd be like, ooh, shiny, something new and different. I like new and different on exams. Exams get real dull. Okay, let me go back. Still just one question here. I'll explain that in a sec. All right, you feel okay about that? It's really, I know I said, this one's pretty straightforward. I have to redo a lot of these questions, because some of them are too easy. That's okay. That's okay. Someone phoned me during class on Friday. It's all good. And it like rings on my computer for some reason, even though I have it in do not disturb mode. Okay. Oh, this is on families. This is maybe a little bit of I don't know, maybe it's not subtle. I felt like it kind of was when I wrote this morning. Okay, so how are housing trends among late millennials and Gen Z reflective of other trends in the course? Okay, so there are a lot of things that you can talk about. The easy one is obviously slow life strategy. So what, I guess, here for this, you'd have to identify what are the housing trends, right? Oh, yeah, please.
When you say late millennials, do you mean like young millennials?
Yes. Yeah, sorry, I should. Yes, you've got that. Yeah, late millennials, like the last part of that cohort, or young millennials, yes, would be another way of putting it. So I think I've been using young millennials through the course, except for right now, where I decided to go late millennials. So yeah, that's a good question. Have I mentioned how tired I am today? Okay. That's a good catch. Okay, yeah, young millennials or late millennials. I'll try to make sure that I use young millennials if I ask a question. Okay, so what did we see in the housing data, right? When we looked at families, well, far more young people are living with parents far later, right? They are staying with their parents for far longer, especially in certain parts of Canada, right? So the GTA and Vancouver in particular, right? They're living there because economically it is really, really difficult for them to get into, the housing market, to support themselves, to get into jobs that pay enough, and all of those things, to service debts, all of that stuff. Okay, so how is it reflective of other trends? Okay, so what is the trend? The trend is staying with parents longer, right? Many more people likely, and we see this kind of generally upward trend in young people living with their parents for longer. I guess, by the way, again, especially in the most expensive metro areas in the country. So how is it reflective of other trends in the course? So you could say the generally slower life strategy that we see with late or young millennials and Gen Z, that one, the extension of the creation of the category of, say, emerging adulthood, or the extension of adolescence for a longer and longer period. That would be the two major ones that I say, like this, and this inability to enter adulthood fully because you're not hitting those markers of, say, home ownership, marriage, children. Maybe you have a dog. I don't know. I was going to say pet ownership, but that one I can't be as sure. So all of those things, right? It's all connected. It all kind of goes together to this slower movement into adulthood. And why is that significant? Well, because it marks a major shift in terms of how the generational cohorts are progressing, and especially a radical slowing down for young millennials and Gen Z in terms of their kind of movement into the next part of their life. So taking longer and longer, and they're struggling to some extent more and more with these kinds of transitions, right? So that, again, a pretty basic question, but I think it makes sense. And those are my 3 practice questions. How do you feel about that? I'm going to make sure I have to rewrite the questions on family because I wasn't happy with them when I looked at them this morning. So I wrote this one. I burned one of my good idea questions just to show you, what this looks like. And I feel sad about it because writing good questions is really hard. Writing bad questions, super easy. Writing good questions, really hard. How are you feeling? Okay. All right. I'm going to go back to questions. And if this is the only question, then we're going to end like 25 minutes early and I won't see you again until Friday. Which is good. Again, so I will just say before I answer this question, same thing as last time, right? It's open to you. The exam's open to you for the entire day, midnight to 11:59 p.m. So you can write it anytime. You might want to write it earlier in the day because I'm going to be much more active on email. I know there's a couple people that were like, oh, if I had been able to ask a question, I'll answer that in a second. If I'd had a chance to ask a question, I might have done better. I will be here, I will come in at 10 and I'll be here and I'll walk around this room. And if no one's here, I will leave. But if you want to look through the questions and ask them and kind of write it early, I will definitely be here. So you can do that and clarify any problems. You can do it by email. But again, if you start your exam at 9 o'clock at night, the chances that I'm going to see your email decline rapidly because, anytime after like 6:30 p.m., I'm putting kids to bed and, okay, I'm maybe playing Fortnite with my 11-year-old because that's the night his mom goes to work out. So that's the night we can cheat and play Fortnite really late. So whatever, we won't mention that. But if I'm playing Fortnite with my 11-year-old, he's way better than me. It's depressing. He's like, just build ramps and walls. And I'm like, huh? Anyway, as much as likely I'm going to answer your email. Earlier in the day, especially working hours, I'm like, I have email open all the time. So just keep that in mind. Okay. But yeah, you have the whole day. If you think you might have questions, right, or you want to be sure that I'll answer them, just try to do it earlier in the day, because towards the end of the day, I'm kind of a write-off and I don't check my email as much. Anything else? I think that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. Again, it's non-cumulative. So you might have like some concepts like slow life plan, fast life plan, or fast life strategy, slow life strategy. That'll kind of carry over, and you're going to want to keep those in mind because you've kept talking about them, right? Even some of the things that I've talked about in both parts, like Gen X, and the way that their shift in education moved, to different sorts of fields, right? Less so into sort of the humanities and social sciences, more to things that make them more money. You want to keep those things in mind as well. There's a little bit of bleed over between the sections. It's not as bad as 376, where everything carries through the whole course. And people are like, is it cumulative? I'm like, I don't know how to answer that question. In this class, it's more non-cumulative, but there's still concepts that kind of flow through. We did play Zero Build. It was fun. But, I'm getting there. I can do basic things. He's just so much quicker than me. And honestly, I've always been bad at shooters. So going back to GoldenEye 64, I was bad at that too. My friends made fun of me. Leaves deep scars. But yeah, anyway, I think I've over-explained. Okay. Could I please explain again that youth being seen as entitled in work? That is a sentence, right? Okay. Okay. Yes. I mean, basically, this is the kind of, so this has been a perception, really starting with millennials, and it's carried through to Gen Z. The idea, especially that younger workers, don't want to put in the time on the ground floor, right? That they want sort of the perks of having worked for a long time without having put in the work at the beginning. So they want vacation, they want work-life balance, right? They want good pay, less need for review, and all of those kinds of things right at the beginning. Now, this has been interpreted by especially baby boomers and some Gen Xers as entitlement, because specifically baby boomers, their entry into the market, they have this sense that they paid their dues working, in the worst positions, not getting that work-life balance, right? Not getting good vacations, having crappy pay at the beginning, all of that kind of stuff. And they paid their dues, they worked their way up in organizations, and they're like, well, millennials and Gen Z don't want to do that. What they're not understanding, of course, is that it's just a cultural difference, right? It's something that, in a sense, having seen their boomer parents work themselves to death, and a lot of, especially millennials, having experienced a lot of absent parents because they were working, don't want that. And they just have different kinds of values around work. So that, it's not entitlement, it's different values. And, millennials, most of the studies have said they're willing to work really, really hard. They also just want a certain kind of balance between work and life and that sort of thing. So hopefully that answers that question. Only haven't mentioned one trend and explain it for the last sample question. Well, let's go back. I think one is sufficient for this. As long as you can kind of grab onto one trend that's kind of happened, I would be happy with that. And especially, so again, there's two parts to this. You need to identify housing trends, like what are the housing trends? It's actually a two-part question. And then how is it connected to something else in the course, right? So you have to understand both of those for the 5 marks. But yeah, one trend would be more than sufficient. And then, give me a sense of why it's significant. So yeah, just make sure, like if the question, I know it's not segmented in this question in a way, it's like, I'm not asking you and putting like, I know people online can't see me, but I don't care. Here, it's not segmented to say you need to highlight this, but none of the rest of the question is going to make sense unless you identify what the changes in the housing trends are, right? So you can't, if you just jump in and you're like, housing trends are connected to blah in this way, it'll be like, okay, well, you didn't clearly tell me what the housing trends were. So just like for a question like this, make sure like, if I'm asking about housing trends, just very briefly explain what's happened for millennials and Gen Z, and then what other trend is it connected to, just very quickly explain that, and make sure so that I know that you're understanding both parts of that. Again, like I said, I still have to rewrite some questions before Wednesday, so that's part of my. Let's say I'll schedule that Tuesday between 10 p.m. and 3 in the morning to give you some really saucy questions that make perfect sense, I'm sure. No, I'm kidding. I'll do that. Hopefully, I'll get to that today. But just, yeah, be aware if I'm asking you to identify a trend like housing trends, just make sure you tell me what it is. And that should be sufficient. Okay. I think I've explained everything. Okay. If there's no other questions, I'll stick around, right? You can come and chat with me. I'm not going to go anywhere, but since y'all are Monday morning quiet, off the rest of you go. Reclaim your 18 minutes and yeah, don't forget to do the exam. I will send a reminder tomorrow that the exam is on Wednesday for anyone who may have forgotten. So you won't, obviously you're all, for those here, you're not going to forget because you actually came to class. I'm more worried about other people. Oh no, another question. People really holding out till the end here. Humans also face housing trends of living more with their parents. Okay, so young millennials, late millennials means the same thing. Basically, the late millennial or young millennial is the younger or later part of that cohort, right? So it means the same thing. So yes, the answer to this question is yes. Okay, I'm sorry for the confusing wording. All right, I'll endeavor to do better. I'll do make sure I'm using consistent wording. Okay, yes, you're off. Good luck studying. Let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, I'm around all day pretty much tomorrow in my office, so you can drop by and chat if you need to, or, I can do online. It's a little bit trickier, but I can do an online appointment. If you don't want to come to campus and you're not here, just let me know and we will work it out if you have something you want to talk about with me. All right, we will see you on Friday for sure. Darkness, my old friend.